Hello, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Batliner, and I am here today with another story celebrating women that have made history, honoring Women's History Month for March. Today's story is called Little Melba and Her Big Trombone by Catherine Russell Brown. Illustrations by Frank Morrison. If you look to the right at the very bottom, you will see a black sticker. This is an award sticker that this book is a great book. It's a biography talking about Melba Liston. So you may have never heard of her, but by the end of the story, I do believe you will see what a great woman she was in America's history. Look at these illustrations. Looking at these people, does this look like it is a story about the past or a story about the future or the present? Yeah, I don't know very many people who dress like that. I don't know um, anybody who has a baby carriage like that anymore. So I can infer that this is from the past. Spread the word. Little Melba Doretta Liston was something special. The year she was born was 1926. The place was Kansas City, where you could reach out and feel the music. The avenues were lined with jazz clubs, street bands, and folks harmonizing on every corner. All the hot music makers made sure they had a gig in KC. Great illustration. From as far back as her memory would go, Melba loved the sounds of music. Blues, jazz, and gospel rhythms danced in her head. The plink of a guitar, the hum of a bass, the thrum thrum of a drum, the ping pang of a piano, the tremble of a sweet horn. Boys and girls, those of you that are older especially, plink, hum, thrum, thrum, ping, pang, tremble. What are all those words called? It's that big long word, and I know we've talked about it before. Yes, it is onomatopoeia. And that simply means that the name of the word or what the word is kind of makes the sound of that word. Notes stirred and rhythms bubbled all through Melba's home. She couldn't get enough. Music was always on her mind. She daydreamed about beats and lyrics. Music was on Melba's mind at night, too, when she should have been fast asleep. Melba loved to hum along with the radio. Sometimes the music sounded so good, she cupped her ear to the majestic and closed her eyes. She especially loved Fats Waller with his growly voice and booming piano. The player piano came alive when Melba's kinfolk stopped by. While Melba pedaled, her aunties danced around the room. Another great illustration. I can really tell that they're dancing. With all that music flying by, Melba wanted to create her own sounds. When she was 7 years old, she decided to sign up for music class at school. What instrument could I play? Melba wondered. At the traveling music store, Melba eyed a long, funny-looking horn. That one, she cried. It's beautiful. A trombone? Mama Lucille frowned. It's too big and you're a little girl. Please, Melba begged. Mama Lucille bought the shiny trombone on the spot. She couldn't say no to her only child. Melba beamed from ear to ear and squeezed her new friend. So I want you to think about it. How many times have you said please to an adult in your life because you wanted something? Yeah, I have done it. Put your pinky in the air if you have gotten what you wanted when you said please and begged. Yeah, there were many times that I didn't get what I wanted, but there were some times that I did. Oh, look at that trombone. Remember, she's 7, and look at how big it is. That night on the porch, Melba listened to Grandpa John playing his guitar. This time, she had her own music maker. Grandpa John showed Melba how to cradle the horn. She tried to push out the slide, but her arm was too short. She had to tilt her head sideways and stretch out her arm. Melba gave the horn a mighty blow. Honk! Honk! It sounded bad, like a howling dog. I'm no good, Grandpa, Melba said, tearing up. If you can blow, you can play, Grandpa John said. Now stand up straight and blow steady. Melba stayed up real late and practiced until she could play a simple tune all by herself. Any of you play a musical instrument and the very, very, very first time you played, it sounded awful? Yes. She looks like she's getting better stretching it out. Even with her keen ear, teaching herself to play the trombone was no piece of cake. But Melba kept blowing her horn, getting better day by day. The cool brass of the horn felt swell on her fingers. Before long, Melba and her horn were making magic. She was only 8 when the local radio station invited her to play a solo. Mama Lucille and Grandpa John were so proud as they watched little Melba play her big trombone. Hard times hit rock bottom in 1937. That's when Melba and her mother moved to Los Angeles. The long train ride took them 5 states west and a world away from Kansas City. Melba's new teacher discovered that she was as smart as a whip. Her test scores were so high, the principal skipped her from 6th grade to 8th. It's pretty good. In high school, Melba joined Alma Hightower's famous after school music club. Melba quickly became the star player of the club's band, the Melodic Dots. The other club members struggled to keep up with Melba. Jealous boys called her bad names. She tried not to care, but way down deep, the names hurt. Melba used her horn to turn all those hurt feelings into soulful music. So, why do you think the boys called her mean names? Yeah, they were jealous of her. She was so good that they couldn't keep up with her. So, because they were jealous, they made fun of her. We've talked about this in our SEL classes. Should we do that? No, we should always be kind. Take a look at their faces. Melba's talent kept growing. She began writing music too. Then, in 1943, when she was 17, Melba was invited to tour the country with a new band led by trumpet player Gerald Wilson. Go meet the world, Mama Lucille said, and hugged Melba goodbye. You have my blessing. Melba could feel it in her bones. The jazz scene was calling her name. So, looking at this jazz band, were there mostly men or women? Yeah, it looks like she's the only woman. Do you think that was easy or hard? I'm thinking it was hard too. Traveling with the band was a thrill. Each city, from Salt Lake to New York, was an eyeful of something new. Melba became a master musician. She composed and arranged music, spinning rhythm, harmonies, and melodies into gorgeous songs. And when Melba played the trombone, her bold notes and one of a kind sound mesmerized the crowd. Still, Melba was lonely. She was the only woman in the band. Some of the men were cruel. Others acted as if she wasn't there. Melba let the music in her head keep her company. Rough times came when Melba traveled down south with singer Billie Holiday and her band. Some white folks didn't show good manners towards folks with brown skin. Hotel rooms were hard to come by, and the band members often had to sleep on the bus. Restaurants didn't always want their business. In the clubs, audience sometimes just sat and stared at the band, or didn't show up at all. Discouraged, Melba almost walked away from her trombone for good. So if you take a look at this illustration in the back, yeah, it only says for whites only. So if you were a person of color, they did not let you sleep there. How unfair is that? But Melba fans wouldn't let her quit. By the 1950s, all the cool jazz musicians wanted some of Melba magic. Dizzy Gillespie, Duke Ellington, Quincy Jones, and more. They wanted to be on the bandstand with Melba and her divine horn. They wanted to play Melba's music. She was pretty famous. Melba and her music trotted around the globe, dazzling audiences and making headlines in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. All her life, Melba kept composing and arranging music, kept making her trombone sing. Spread the word, Melba Doretta Liston was something special. Melba Doretta Liston, she lived from 1926 to 1999, was a multi-talented jazz virtuoso, a true pioneer. She was one of the first women of any race to become a world-class trombone player, composer, and arranger. A self-taught child prodigy, Liston began playing trombone at age 7. Her musical gifts were so extraordinary that one of her teachers in Los Angeles asked Liston's mother for permission to adopt the young musician. The teacher wanted to work with Liston and then send her to the finest music teachers available. Liston's mother did not let her daughter go. In high school, Liston joined Hightower's after-school music club. Hightower, an African American music educator, taught her students Black history through music, dance, and poetry. At age 16, Liston left Hightower's group to become a professional musician. Once she had her membership card from the Los Angeles Musicians Union, Liston began playing with Bardu Ali's pit band at the Lincoln Theater. While there, she also started writing music. After the International Sweethearts of Rhythm Band performed at the theater, they asked Liston to join them. She worked briefly with the famous all-girl group, but then returned to Ali's band. In 1943, Liston, only 17 years old, was hired for trumpeter Gerald Wilson's new band for a cross-country tour. She stayed with the band for 5 years. When Wilson's band broke up, Liston joined the band led by famed trumpeter Dizzy Gillespie. A year later, the group disbanded, And in 1949, Liston was invited to play with Billie Holiday's band as it toured the South. The tour did not go well. The farther south the band traveled, the smaller the audiences became. They did not appreciate the band's new bebop sound. The tour was cut short, and the musicians had to call home for money so they could return to Los Angeles. Liston decided to take a break from performing on the road. For a few years, she worked as a secretary at the Los Angeles Board of Education. She also had some small roles in movies. In 1956, Liston returned to music. Dizzy Gillespie asked her to join his band on a tour of the Middle East and Asia for the United States Department. Quincy Jones took a band on tour in Europe and invited Liston to come with them. In 1957, Liston met composer and pianist Randy Weston. They collaborated often for near the next 40 years. Liston was the arranger for 10 albums with Weston. In 1958, Melba Liston and Her Bones was released. The album was the only one Liston recorded as the lead musician. In the 1960s, Melba Liston wrote arrangements and conducted recordings for many of the popular musicians and groups. Len Serra, a composer Liston wrote, was one of her favorites. From 1973 to 1979, Liston lived in Jamaica and taught at the University of the West Indies. When she came back to the United States, she formed her own band. Liston had a stroke in 1985 that left her partially paralyzed, and she was forced to give up playing her beloved trombone. With the aid of a computer, Liston continued to compose and arrange work through the 1990s. Liston received many honors for her jazz musicianship. In 1987, the National Endowment for the Arts named Liston a Jazz Master, the highest honor the United States gives to a jazz artist. The first International Women's Brass Conference in 1993 honored Liston as a brass woman pioneer. In 1995, Liston was interviewed by the Smithsonian for its Jazz Oral History program. Melba Liston's collaborations are legendary. She played with the best, among them Dexter Gordon, Gerald Wilson, Dizzy Gillespie, Billie Holiday, and Quincy Jones. She composed and arranged music for Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Randy Weston, Tony Bennett, Eddie Fisher, Billy Eckstine, The Supremes, Dinah Washington, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Bob Marley, Marvin Gaye, and more. Today, Melba Liston sounds are heard across the Black music diaspora, including jazz, rhythm, blues, and reggae. Holy cow, did she accomplish a lot. So here is Melba Liston, and then here is another picture of her. So if your teachers have a chance, perhaps they can go onto YouTube and they can look for some of her music so that you have a chance to listen to exactly what her music sounded like. Because it's not like the music that you listen to today. I hope you enjoyed this story, and I will see you the next time.